Law banning insults to the national anthem is passed.
It's very important for Hong Kong to maintain its freedom of speech and freedom of protest.
Hong Kongers stressed the need to remember Tiananmen.
Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The National Anthem Bill was passed today by an overwhelming majority in the Legislative Council.
As Kena Chu reports, it is now officially a crime to insult the March of the Volunteers in Hong Kong.
With 41 votes for and just 1 vote against, the contentious national anthem bill will now be added to the books, criminalizing behavior disrespectful to the Chinese national anthem. This includes altering the hymn's lyrics or insulting it, which warrants a jail sentence of up to 3 years, in addition to a $50,000 fine.
The word insult is used in many pieces of legislation with clear definition. However, the opposition camp just seeks to lay out distorted arguments to gain popularity.
With the Legislative Council election just 3 months away, among the concerns was whether a newly elected legislator would be ousted for failing to sing with etiquette the national anthem ahead of their swearing in.
The only exception is that you can't make use of the opportunity to put up a political show by insulting the national anthem.
But the pro-democracy bloc remains skeptical, perceiving it more as a part of the administration's hardline approach in cracking down on diverging political opinions in the city.
Whenever you see an issue, you will try to pass a law to prohibit it. You never think about the source of the problem. For the SARG officials who have lived under the colonial rule, and you have benefited from the civilian government, are you still upholding any of those well-cherished traditions?
They tabled 21 amendment proposals, but none of them made it through.
We have loopholes in this bill, and in the future, if any such related offense is subject to arbitrary interpretation, you must ask yourself whether you can preserve the dignity of the council.
Since last week, a heavy police and security presence has been guarding the Legislative Council to prevent any protesters planning to disrupt the debate over the national anthem bill. Kena Chu, TVB News.
Meanwhile, scuffles erupted inside LegCo as lawmakers debated the national anthem bill. Jacqueline has that story.
Some last-ditch efforts to thwart the passing of the national anthem bill. This as Pan-Democrat Eddie Chu made a dash for the chairman's podium while holding a bottle with brown liquid. As security guards tried to restrain Chu, he struggled to pour the foul-smelling fluid out. Similar moves were made by lawmaker Ray Chan. The meeting was adjourned as a result. Police and firemen were called to the scene. Meeting the press after the melee, Chu said the liquid was biofertiliser, a symbol of what he says is a regime that stinks.
A murderer state stinks forever. And what we did today is to remind the world that we should never forgive the Chinese Communist Party for killing its own people 31 years ago. We are here also to stop the national anthem ordinance, which is definitely going to restrict the freedom and human rights of Hong Kong people.
The pro-establishment camp meanwhile lambasted the disruptions as despicable tactics to stall what they claim is a constitutional duty Hong Kong should fulfill. As the meeting resumed, another Pan-Democrat Ted Hui staged similar stunt. But all these efforts were unable to prevent the ultimate eventuality of criminalizing insults to the national anthem in the city. Police are also not ruling out possible prosecution over the liquid throwing cases. Jacqueline, TVB News.
Scores of people are gathering in Victoria Park in defiance of a ban on the annual vigil for the victims of the 1989 Tiananmen crackdown.
The annual event was banned for the first time in 30 years after authorities cited the need for social distancing amid the pandemic. Pinky Wong filed this report from Victoria Park, where the vigil is usually held.
Despite the ban, Hong Kong was bracing for pop-up protests as vigil organizers set up around 100 street booths across the city. This year's theme is Fight for Truth, Freedom and Life. At Victoria Park, where the annual vigil is usually held, barricades were set up around the venue while police patrolled the area.
Today is the June 4th 31st anniversary, and we have been holding this candlelight vigil in Victoria Park for over the last 30 years. But this year, the police banned our gathering in the name of virus. But when you look at Hong Kong, everywhere is so crowded. The national security law that will be coming in. We do not know what will happen next year. And that is exactly the problem with Hong Kong. One country, two system is now being threatened. And we do not know whether next year the rights and freedom that we have all in the past, can we still exercise it next year?
With Beijing moving to pass national security legislation for Hong Kong, some participants are expressing worries.
We are afraid it is the last year we can come here to speak our voice. Yeah, I don't think it is reasonable. They said it is because the coronavirus, but I think they banned this event because of some political reason.
It's very important for Hong Kong to maintain its freedom of speech and freedom of protest, and especially the bill from the CCP last week. And I think if we don't grab this chance to speak up for ourselves, we may lose this kind of chance sooner or later.
Police officers have been patrolling the entrance of Victoria Park here in Causeway Bay since 5 p.m. Street booths were also set up in Tuen Mun, Ma On Shan and Mong Kok. Organizers have urged people to light a candle wherever they are at 8 p.m. and observe a minute of silence afterwards. At the University of Hong Kong, their student union group held a memorial in front of the Pillar of Shame, which depicts the victims of the crackdown. Students also cleaned the statue plaques as part of the commemoration. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
Well, in Beijing, a group known as the Tiananmen Mothers was at Wan'an Cemetery to mourn their families and those who died on this day 31 years ago. Just like in previous years, they were accompanied by the National Police. Remember, the group says although the authorities have been monitoring them all these years, they'll never give up on their fight for justice. Meanwhile, one of the founders of the Tiananmen Mothers is stranded in South Africa because of the COVID-19 pandemic. She had other members pay respects to the victims on her behalf.
In Taiwan, President Tsai Ing-wen and her predecessor Ma Ying-jeou also reflected on the memory of the June 4th crackdown. Tsai posted on social media a picture of June 4th on a calendar, saying each year there's one day that's forgotten on the mainland. She also sent her blessings to Hong Kong. Ma, meanwhile, urged the mainland to do justice to June 4th, adding the pain it caused ends up fueling the world's great distrust towards China. He added that's also why tensions keep rising between the mainland and Hong Kong, including over recent events related to the national security law.
The Trump administration has moved to block Chinese airlines from flying to the United States in a further escalation of trade and diplomatic tensions between the two countries. The U.S. Transportation Department said it will suspend passenger flights of 4 Chinese airlines to and from the United States starting June 16th. The decision is in response to China's failure to allow United Airlines and Delta to resume flights to China this month. The U.S. airline companies suspended those flights earlier this year in response to the coronavirus pandemic that started in China. The mainland air regulator said today more airlines will be allowed to resume flights to China, but made no mention of United and Delta.
U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says he doesn't support deploying troops to quell protests in the country, despite Trump saying the possibility is on the table. Those remarks come as Trump's former defense secretary, Jim Mattis, wrote a scathing statement describing Trump as a threat to the Constitution. He said Donald Trump is the first president in his lifetime who does not unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide. Mattis resigned as Trump's defense secretary in 2018.
Welcome back to TVB News. 5 returnees from Bangladesh have come down with COVID-19, bringing the city's tally to 1,098.
Meanwhile, a number of households in Lukchin House in Sha Tin have been evacuated after a resident initially tested positive for the virus. One more probable case of COVID-19 could mean 7 residents living here at Lukchin House have come down with the coronavirus. The 72-year-old man lives with his wife and daughter. 3 days ago, his samples tested negative, but then he had a fever yesterday and was taken to the hospital. Today, his samples tested initially positive for the virus. Health authorities say he lives in flat 12, the same number as the flat that the first infected couple reside in. So far, there are 4 households with confirmed cases of COVID-19, which live in flats 10 or 12 of the housing block. This has prompted health authorities to evacuate all residents living in flats numbered 10 or 12 and send them to quarantine.
We have 3 units sharing the same sewage system, although we have not discovered any defects yet. But we cannot ignore there is a possibility that there are transmissions through the sewage system. That's why we believe it is safe to evacuate all the residents connecting to that soil pipe to enable a thorough check by Housing Department colleagues.
Authorities added they've collected saliva samples from almost all 1,200 residents in the block, but stressed 6 households are still out of reach. Meanwhile, some 300 Hong Kongers stranded in India returned home this morning. They are the second batch of Hong Kong residents who came back on board special flights arranged by the government. But these passengers were mainly people with special needs, pregnant women and children. They also paid for the flight. The group also left their saliva samples at the Asia World Expo before heading to Chenyang Estate to undergo 14 days of mandatory quarantine. A malaria drug promoted by the U.S. president as a treatment for COVID-19 has shown to be ineffective in people exposed to the coronavirus.
Well, despite the findings, the World Health Organization says it will resume trials of hydroxychloroquine. Peter Coveas has the details.
A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine revealed hydroxychloroquine is not effective in preventing COVID-19 in people exposed to the virus, and it is no better than a sugar pill.
The trial, basically half the people got hydroxychloroquine and half did not, and the overall rate of new COVID infection was very similar. So in the hydroxychloroquine group, it was 12%, and in the placebo group, it was 14%.
The drug is approved for use in treating arthritis and malaria. No large studies have shown it to be safe or effective, and some studies suggest it may do harm.
So overall, our clinical trials show that hydroxychloroquine does not prevent COVID-19 after someone has been exposed to someone with coronavirus.
The U.S. president said he took it himself despite side effects and no proof it is effective.
Overall, 40% of the participants who took hydroxychloroquine had some side effect. The vast majority of these were mild. There were upset stomach, nausea, some diarrhea.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization will resume trials of hydroxychloroquine as a potential treatment for COVID-19. It was suspended last week to conduct a safety review. Peter Corveos, TVB News.
British police say a German man has been identified as a suspect in the case of a 3-year-old British girl who disappeared 13 years ago while on holiday in Portugal. Metropolitan Police aren't naming the man, but say he was around the same resort area at the time Madeleine McCann disappeared in 2007.
This is a significant development. We've been working on this line of inquiry for a couple of years. He is a German national. He's currently in a German prison for an unrelated matter. He's white. He's about 6 foot in height. He's 43 now. At the time, he was 30.
Police have linked the suspect to a camper van pictured in the resort area at the time of the girl's disappearance. The suspect spent years in Portugal and has 2 previous convictions for sexual contact with girls. German police aren't ruling out additional victims. Madeleine vanished from her bedroom during a family holiday in the Algarve shortly before her 4th birthday. A spokesman for the family says Madeleine's parents feel the announcement of a new suspect is a potentially very significant development in the case.
Germany's governing parties agreed on a €130 billion stimulus package meant to help kickstart Europe's biggest economy, which has taken a heavy hit from the coronavirus pandemic. Following 2 days of talks in Berlin, Chancellor Angela Merkel said the package was a bold response. The stimulus package will see the main value-added tax rate cut from 19% to 16%. There will also be cash handouts for families and households. Among dozens of other measures, the government will extend aid to sectors that have been particularly badly hit by the pandemic. That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.